It begins with the sound of wind through trees. A quiet morning. Somewhere the sun slips slowly over the horizon. Light spills gently across rooftops, hills, waves, the curve of the earth. Birds stir. A kettle begins to boil. And in this moment, as always, the world is astonishingly complex. And yet everything continues as if by design. We rarely notice it. The quiet choreography of life, the subtle rhythms, the way a leaf turns toward the sun without being told, the way your lungs expand and your heart keeps time without permission or thought. There is no central conductor, no switchboard operator pulling levers behind the sky. And yet things move, not always perfectly, but consistently, orderly, mysteriously. Tonight we're not here to argue a case, not to push belief nor disbelief. We're simply here to wonder, why is it all like this? Why does the honeybee dance in circles to explain where the nectar lies? Why do seashells spiral in perfect ratios, known to Renaissance painters and modern physicists alike? Why does your body, without instruction, produce thoughts, dreams, skin, and bone all at once? This isn't a mystery we need to solve. It's one we can rest inside, like a forest, or a symphony, or a poem in a language you almost understand. Over the next 2 hours, we'll lie gently inside this vast puzzle. We'll listen to the hum of hidden systems, the unseen elegance, the strange, gentle sense that maybe, just maybe, things are more connected than they seem, that the world is too complex to be a coincidence, that the coincidence itself might be beautiful. So lie back, let your eyes grow heavy, and let's begin. Let's begin not in the stars or in scripture or in theory, but in the ordinary. A Tuesday morning, you wake. The light has shifted slightly. Maybe it's later in the year. You stretch, you yawn, you breathe. Breathing, so simple, so automatic, is a kind of miracle. You don't instruct it. You don't manufacture oxygen. But the body knows. It draws in air, filters it, sends it through countless passageways, down to the alveoli, across membranes, into blood cells, out again. You breathe, and you don't even notice. This is not magic. This is biology. But biology is mysterious. And while you brush your teeth, your stomach is already beginning to digest yesterday's bread. Enzymes break it down. Acid churns it. Nutrients are extracted and dispatched. Proteins become muscle. Sugars become energy. You didn't ask it to happen. It just does. Outside your window, a small flower leans upward, unaware of you entirely. Its stem full of xylem and phloem, tiny vessels carrying water, minerals, and sunlight-turned energy through green living tissue. A bee approaches. The flower's shape fits the bee's body like an invitation. It lands, collects nectar. Pollen sticks to its legs. The bee flies on, not knowing it has just helped fertilize 1,000 seeds that will one day become more flowers, perhaps enough to fill a whole field. These interactions are not orchestrated by humans. They were never planned, but they function intimately, elegantly, all the same. And we walk past them. We pave over them. We eat from their results. And rarely, if ever, do we pause to think, what invisible structure holds all this together? What keeps a bee returning to a blossom while 1 trillion cells in your body organize themselves into the shape called you? What keeps the world turning quietly beneath our feet while we check our phones Continue when ready. Now imagine this same Tuesday, but from above. From high up, far beyond the clouds, cities look like circuits. Streets are veins. Highways resemble arteries. Lights flicker like neurons. And the people below, small as ants, move in patterns that echo the ones in your body, in your brain, in your blood. Every morning, millions wake. They shower. They eat. They move from one building to another. They follow invisible scripts, work, errands, appointments, patterns so familiar we forget they are patterns at all. But within each action lies an astonishing system. Take the loaf of bread on your table. It exists because of weather systems, wheat genetics, soil microbes, harvesting equipment, trade agreements, logistics networks, yeast strains, and heat. Something baked in minutes was shaped by years of quiet complexity. Even something as ordinary as traffic holds an elegant strangeness. Every red light is timed. Every intersection predicted. Algorithms monitor flow. Cameras feed data to servers. But still, one small hesitation and everything ripples. One car brakes early and miles behind a jam forms. Chaos on the surface, but underneath structure. Even in your own home, the electricity flowing through your walls is a miracle of design, generated far away, rooted across landscapes, transformed through substations, regulated in voltage, delivered on demand. A push of a button and light appears, warmth, sound, motion. And yet, despite all this, most of us drift through these systems unaware. We rarely see the roots of the tree we live in. We don't notice the minerals in our phones, dug from ancient rock, or the tiny sensors measuring temperature in our fridges, or the thousands of years of knowledge embedded in each light bulb, each faucet, each lock and hinge. We simply use them, move on, wonder why we feel disconnected. But maybe the disconnection is the illusion, because every step, every breath, every transaction is part of something vast, not planned by a single mind, but not random either. A woven complexity, quietly pulsing beneath the ordinary. And if we pay attention not to the noise, but to the patterns, we might begin to sense the depth of the fabric. The way the threads stretch not just through cities or machines or nature, but through us, through everything. Let's shift now from the city to a single drop of water. Imagine holding it in your palm, cool, clear, trembling slightly with movement. At first glance, it seems simple, pure, still, but inside that droplet is teeming with structure. Each molecule, 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen, forms an angle, not a straight line. That tiny bend gives water its strange behaviors. The way it clings to surfaces, forms droplets, crawls up stems, holds together in streams. Without this one small detail, life as we know it could not exist. Water expands when it freezes. Unlike almost every other substance, ice floats. Lakes freeze from the top down, not bottom up. Life can survive beneath the surface. Forests bloom again in spring. These are not random facts. They are part of a fragile, elegant balance. And now zoom further into your body. More than half of you is water. Not just as blood or sweat, but inside each cell. It bathes your organs, cushions your brain, carries signals and nutrients in a liquid language written long before you were born. Even here, in the most familiar things, there is wonder. Consider the roots of a tree. They don't merely dig downward. They sense moisture, pH levels, gravity. They branch based on opportunity. Chemicals in the soil whisper instructions. Fungi join in, forming hidden alliances called mycorrhizae. Together they share resources across vast distances. A forest underground is one enormous conversation. And in this hidden web, carbon is exchanged, oxygen produced, life recycled. While above, the leaves sway gently, as if unaware. None of this needs an audience. None of it waits for applause. And yet it continues, silently, patiently, exquisitely. We walk beside these systems, over them, through them, without knowing. We eat their fruit, breathe their air, depend on their equilibrium, and often assume it is all just there. But every part of it required something remarkable. Every breath is the final step in a billion invisible processes. Every seed contains a library of instructions. Every cloud forms from heat and lift and dust and time, and none of it, not one bit, is guaranteed. The beauty of this world is not only in the grand or the rare, it's in the fact that anything happens at all, that water bends, that roots feel, that breath continues, that the ordinary is quietly, endlessly extraordinary. Now let's return to that Tuesday, but slow everything down. You're walking, perhaps, down a familiar path, past buildings or trees. You notice things faintly, a bird overhead, the weight of your keys in your pocket, a flicker of sunlight through leaves. But beneath the silence, beneath the routine, is an orchestra of movement you can't see. Each tree you pass is inhaling carbon dioxide and exhaling oxygen, not randomly but precisely with purpose. Chloroplasts inside leaf cells gather sunlight, convert it to energy. Sugars are formed, water pulled from the ground, oxygen released. You breathe what they offer. They feed on what you give. A quiet exchange, unseen yet constant. You touch a doorknob. Without thinking, your skin sends hundreds of messages through nerves about texture, temperature, pressure. Those signals race to your brain at hundreds of feet per second. They're sorted, translated, registered, all before you're even aware you've touched anything at all. You take a sip of coffee. Your tongue identifies sweetness, acidity, heat. Thousands of taste receptors activate. Your brain compares them to memory, familiar, comforting. The act of drinking is a whole sensory symphony: heat, scent, movement, satisfaction. And all the while, your body repairs itself. Cells die, cells divide, bone regenerates. Blood is filtered. Your immune system patrols like an invisible city guard. Millions of operations per second, unnoticed, unthanked, uninterrupted. This is daily life, not as we see it, but as it is. Layer upon layer of complexity, like glass stacked on glass. Each pane clear, yet together forming something rich, deep, alive. It's tempting to believe life is mechanical, that it ticks forward without mystery. But even machines owe their shape to something deeper. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, all rooted in laws no one invented. Laws we can describe, but not fully explain. Why does gravity curve space? Why does DNA store information with 4 letters and not 5? Why do snowflakes form in 6-fold symmetry? And why, amidst all of this, do we dream? These aren't questions to answer quickly. They are invitations to pause, to see daily life not as dull or random, but as a hidden cathedral, built cell by cell, breath by breath, moment by moment. A quiet structure we live inside, without knowing. And maybe if we truly saw it, we'd never call it ordinary again. Long before microscopes or satellites, people looked at the world and sensed something beneath the surface. They saw stars arranged in constellations, rivers that curved like snakes, the returning seasons, the birth of children, and they wondered, was there a pattern, a reason, a purpose? In ancient Greece, Plato spoke of a realm beyond the visible, a world of perfect forms. He believed that everything we see, trees, animals, even ourselves, are imperfect reflections of ideal shapes, existing in a higher, unseen dimension. To Plato, a tree is not just wood and leaves, but an echo of treeness, something eternal. His student, Aristotle, disagreed. He believed the answers lay in the physical world itself. If we observe closely, categorize, understand, we find order right here. Purpose and design, form and function, joined. The bee's legs match the flower's shape, not by accident, but by necessity. In the East, a different language emerged for these same intuitions. Taoist thinkers describe the Tao, the way, as the natural flow of the universe. It's not a god, not a command, but a kind of cosmic current. To live well is to move with it. To resist it is to suffer. The Tao is in the wind, in the river, in the way a deer steps through the forest. It cannot be seen, but it can be sensed. Buddhist philosophy looked inward. If the outer world is ever changing, rising, falling, dying, renewing, then perhaps the structure lies not in things, but in awareness itself. The mind becomes the place where patterns arise, breathing, thinking, suffering, letting go, a pattern of being. And in the Indian Vedic traditions, creation is described not as a one-time event, but as a dance. The god Shiva destroys and creates in endless cycles. Time itself is a rhythm, existence is a song, and the universe, a kind of breathing. These are not scientific theories in the modern sense, but they are ways of seeing, ways of noticing that there is something at work, something beneath the surface. Later, during the scientific revolution, thinkers like Galileo, Kepler, and Newton began to map that hidden structure with mathematics. The orbits of planets, the pull of gravity, the laws of motion. Suddenly, the heavens seemed less random and more like a great clock. Newton, a devout man, believed he was glimpsing the mind of God. To him, mathematics was not cold or mechanical. It was divine poetry, a language written into the bones of the world. Centuries later, Einstein would echo this awe. The most incomprehensible thing about the universe, he said, is that it is comprehensible, that we can understand it at all, that light behaves predictably, that space has geometry, that the world is not chaos. Again and again, across cultures and centuries, we find this same idea, that behind the noise there is order, that the complexity we live inside is not random, or at least not entirely. And maybe we'll never find the full explanation, but we keep asking, because to ask is to care, to wonder is to be awake. Imagine a monk sitting quietly in a stone cell centuries ago. A candle flickers. Wind moves softly outside the thick walls. The world is still, and in that silence the monk writes, not hurriedly, not for fame, but slowly with devotion, copying ancient texts, observing the turning of seasons, the movement of the stars through a small, high window. He doesn't have a telescope or a microscope, or even a map of the world beyond his valley. And yet he senses something. That time moves like breath, that the stars return in patterns, that the psalms he sings in the chapel seem to echo rhythms he sees in the land, in the sun, in his own heartbeat. This is not science, but it is pattern. It's the same deep noticing that would one day shape science. Thousands of miles away, in China, Confucian scholars organize their world through harmony, between ruler and ruled, parent and child, heaven and earth. They believed the cosmos itself had an order, a proper structure. To live rightly was to live in tune with that structure. In India, Jain monks walked slowly, sweeping the path ahead of them to avoid stepping on insects. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. They saw life everywhere, interconnected, sacred. Even the smallest beings mattered, because all of it was part of the same whole. And in Mesoamerica, the Maya observed the skies with stunning precision. They tracked Venus, the moon, eclipses. Their calendar systems were complex, elegant, not because they had to be, but because they wanted to understand, to map the divine rhythm they felt in the heavens. Each of these traditions, in their own way, reached toward the same idea, that this world, complex, beautiful, vast, is not simply a backdrop. It is a structure, a web, a song. And human beings, for all our flaws and failures, are not separate from it. We are part of the pattern. Even now, when we live surrounded by screens and speed and distraction, that old hunger remains, the desire to know how it all fits, why we're here, what it means that atoms form stars and stars form galaxies and galaxies form a universe. And still, you can love someone, you can dream, you can suffer, you can hope. These are not just emotional truths. They are part of the pattern, too. Order doesn't mean simplicity. It means relationship, connection, a thread that holds things, even opposites, together. The monk, the scientist, the poet, the child, looking at the night sky, all reach in their own way for that thread, not to pull it loose, but to follow it. We tend to think of mystery as something that hides, but some mysteries reveal themselves gently, over time, not by being solved, but by being seen from new angles. Consider the Renaissance, an age not only of art, but of awakening. During this time, thinkers in Europe began to explore the harmony between nature and number. One name appears again and again: Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo sketched birds in flight, mussels in motion, water as it poured. He dissected bodies not from morbid curiosity, but to understand the symmetry inside, the logic of the living form. He believed that art and science were not opposites, they were the same search. He was captivated by proportions, especially the golden ratio, a number approximately 1.618 that appears in pine cones, seashells, hurricanes, and human faces. The Greeks called it phi. Mathematicians call it irrational, but many call it beautiful. Why should a spiral on a sunflower match the curve of a galaxy? Why should a ratio found in ancient temples appear in the structure of DNA? Is it chance or something deeper? Another Renaissance figure, Johannes Kepler, noticed that planetary orbits weren't circles but ellipses. This realization wasn't just a correction, it was a revelation. That beauty could have variation, that precision included irregularity, that the heavens moved with a kind of music, not always in straight lines, but always in pattern. He called it the harmony of the worlds. And that word, harmony, holds something essential. Because harmony doesn't erase difference. It weaves difference into unity. Multiple notes become a chord. Multiple elements become a design. And the more deeply scientists looked, the more they found harmony hidden in what first looked like chaos. Fractals, jagged shapes that repeat endlessly, whether you zoom in or out, found in snowflakes, ferns, coastlines, lungs. Symmetry not just in art, but in particles, in physics, and laws that govern matter itself. Even time and space, once thought separate, were revealed by Einstein to be part of one fabric, curved, dynamic, unified. These are not metaphors. They are real, measured, proven, and still mysterious. Because mystery doesn't end when knowledge begins, sometimes the more we know, the deeper the mystery becomes. The golden ratio is just a number, but why it shows up in petals and pyramids is still unclear. The laws of physics are consistent, but why they are these laws and not others remains an open question. So we find ourselves again on the edge of science and wonder, of structure and awe. Leonardo, Kepler, Einstein, none of them believed the world was random. They believed it was intelligible, not simple, not always kind, but coherent. And that, in itself, is astonishing. That we live in a place where math can describe motion, where beauty and pattern are more than decoration. They're embedded in the code. Centuries passed, but the questions endured. In the 20th century, physics cracked open the atom and found something stranger than anyone expected. Not solid particles orbiting neatly like miniature planets, but clouds of probability, fields, forces, entanglements. Quantum mechanics emerged not as a tidy system, but as a deep puzzle. Particles appear to exist in multiple states until observed. Two particles, separated by vast distances, seem to affect each other instantly. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. And yet it works, accurately, repeatedly, predictably. Underneath the surface, it seems even uncertainty has rules. Cosmology, too, expanded. Telescopes looked farther, deeper. What we found were not empty skies, but structure. Galaxies clustering in threads and filaments like veins across the universe. Matter distributed not randomly, but with elegance. Voids and shapes repeating at unimaginable scales. The early universe, moments after the Big Bang, had a precise balance of forces, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear interactions all tuned within narrow margins. Too strong, and stars would never form. Too weak, and matter would fly apart. Scientists called it the fine-tuning problem. Some saw it as evidence of design. Others pointed to the possibility of multiverses, countless worlds, each with different laws, and we simply live in the one that permits life. But even in that theory, the same awe persists. That life exists at all, that we can ask these questions, that this brain, made of cells, made of atoms, born from stars, can sit in the dark and wonder. Biology, meanwhile, revealed its own mysteries. DNA, a molecule of heredity, turned out to be a code. 4 letters: adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. From those, every living thing is written. Why 4? Why this code? No one knows. And still the code runs, quietly, reliably, in fish and ferns, whales and worms, bacteria and humans. It copies itself, edits itself, mutates, persists. a silent library humming in every cell. In the structure of proteins, we find folds, complex, spontaneous, efficient. In ecosystems, we find feedback loops. In embryology, we find that a single fertilized cell becomes a body, eyes, skin, bones, thoughts, guided not by a conductor, but by signals, gradients, timing, chance, and something else. Something that feels like purpose, not imposed from above, but arising from within. Over and over, nature seems to speak not in declarations, but in whispers, patterns, relationships, quiet instructions. It doesn't say, "This is how it is." It says, "Watch, and you will see." And the more we look, the more the world resembles not a machine, but a language. Not a script to follow blindly, but a poem unfolding, line by line. Let's step further now into the deep fabric of nature, not the surface of things, but the intricate blueprints that underlie everything we see, the quiet architectures of life and matter, motion and form. We begin with DNA. In every living organism, from the smallest microbe to the tallest tree, DNA is the instruction manual, a double helix, two spirals wound around each other like a staircase into the invisible. This shape, elegant and compact, holds the plans for making a life. Inside your body, in nearly every cell, is a complete copy of you, a full genome written in a four-letter alphabet. A, T, C, and G, these letters form sequences like words. Words form instructions. Instructions build proteins. And proteins do nearly everything. They carry oxygen, fight infection, build tissue, send signals, make thoughts possible. And all of this is encoded in a molecule too small to see, yet so precisely arranged that even a single mistake can change the course of a life. It's not only complexity, it's order, folded, stored, copied, shared. And it's not unique to humans. That same elegant molecule connects us to every living thing. The bird outside your window, the moss on the stone, the whale in the ocean, the mushroom in the soil. Each has a version of this code, and within that echoes of each other, a shared origin, a family resemblance, a whisper that says we are made from the same instructions. But the beauty doesn't stop at the molecular. It appears in forms, too, spirals, branches, webs. Mathematicians call them fractals, patterns that repeat at every scale. Look at a fern. Each leaf resembles the whole plant. Zoom into a coastline, and the jagged edge repeats itself endlessly. These forms are not just beautiful. They are efficient, natural, inevitable somehow. They emerge in the growth of trees, in the shape of lungs, enlightening, lightning, in rivers, in the distribution of galaxies, patterns from small to vast, linked not by coincidence, but by deep laws. One of those laws is the Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers where each is the sum of the two before it. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. This sequence appears in pine cones, in flower petals, in hurricanes, in the spiral of your ear. It shapes the growth of shells, the arrangement of seeds, even the curves of galaxies. It is as if nature prefers this rhythm, as if something beneath the surface is counting. And these numbers, these forms, aren't only mathematical curiosities. They are felt. We respond to them, often without knowing why. A face shaped by golden ratio proportions feels pleasing. A building designed with these curves feels harmonious. A melody built on Fibonacci intervals feels natural. Why? Perhaps because our own bodies are built with these proportions. Because the universe is not only observed through math, it is lived through it. You are a pattern, breathing, beating, changing. So is a tree. So is a galaxy. And all of it seems to follow rules written long before any eye could see them, long before anyone could give them names. Now let's widen our lens once more, from the microscopic to the cosmic. Out past the edge of Earth's atmosphere, beyond the pull of our moon, the universe stretches in all directions. It is cold, silent, vast beyond comprehension. And yet it is not empty. It is not random. It is structured. Galaxies cluster along filaments, like threads in a cosmic web. Stars form in spiral arms. Solar systems orbit around dense centers of gravity. Even in the great silence of space, patterns emerge. The laws that shape these vast forms are the same ones that govern a falling apple. Gravity pulls. Mass bends space. Time stretches. Light curves. Einstein's theory of relativity revealed that space and time are not separate, but woven together, a fabric warped by matter, shaped by energy. Black holes form where this fabric folds in on itself. Time slows near them. Light cannot escape. And yet, black holes are not just destroyers. They play roles in galaxy formation. They influence structure on massive scales. Even in collapse, there is connection, purpose. Out here in this cold void, the constants of nature remain steady. The speed of light, the charge of the electron, the strength of gravity. These values do not change. They do not drift. They are not different in some far-off corner of the sky. And this stillness is strange. Because if they were even slightly different, life could not exist. Stars would burn too quickly or never ignite. Atoms would not hold together. Chemistry would not work. DNA could not form. This is known as the fine-tuning of the universe. Some see it as coincidence. Others call it necessity. Still others believe it points to something more, a hidden order, a deeper reason, a design without a designer. We may never know, but we do know this. The cosmos is not a shapeless sea. It is stitched with geometry, balanced with precision, governed by equations elegant enough to fit on a single line and powerful enough to describe the motion of stars. Even randomness, where it exists within limits. In quantum fields, particles flicker into being and vanish again, governed by probabilities, not chaos, not will, but pattern, measurable, predictable, known, and still full of wonder. Because despite all this structure, the universe leaves room for emergence. From hydrogen atoms came galaxies. From galaxies, stars. From stars, planets. From planets, life. And from life, consciousness. Somehow, from dust and fire and gravity and time, awareness arose. The ability to ask, why is any of this here? To look into the night sky and see not just stars, but meaning. To trace invisible patterns, not for power, not for survival, but for beauty. Because something in us recognizes the shape of things. As if we too were made of pattern, and maybe we are. Let us now return to Earth, but stay in the quiet places where pattern reveals itself most clearly. Walk into a forest. At first you may only notice the trees, tall, motionless, familiar, but pause long enough and something shifts. Your eyes adjust. You begin to notice the shapes of leaves, the way branches alternate along a stem, the way sunlight filters in slanted beams, golden and soft. This is not random light. The angle of the sun follows the arc of the earth, the tilt of its axis, the dance of its orbit, and the leaves, they tilt themselves in response, maximizing what they gather, each one in quiet conversation with light. Beneath your feet, the forest is alive with structure. Roots move through soil, not aimlessly, but with direction. They split, branch, seek. They follow gradients of moisture and minerals. Around them, fungal threads weave dense networks, mycelium, and visible highways through which trees share signals and sustenance. A dying tree may send its last nutrients to others. A young sapling in shade may be fed by the older trees nearby. There is no brain here, no spoken language, and yet the pattern behaves like memory, like community. Step closer. Look down. A snail traces a smooth curve across a rock, its shell spiraling outward in the same ratio found in galaxies and hurricanes. A spider builds its web, concentric, radial, elegant. Not taught, not trained, just known. Passed down, not in thought, but in form. Each creature carries its own instructions, not imposed from above, but from within. A bee does not study geometry, but builds hexagons. A bird does not measure altitude, yet knows how high to fly. A nautilus does not know the golden ratio, but lives inside it. This is the quiet genius of nature. Form follows need, and beauty follows form. And while it may not be designed in the way a watch is made, there is still direction, still tendency, still a movement toward complexity, balance, efficiency, rhythm. A snowflake forms from water vapor, each one unique, but all following the same principles of freezing, symmetry, and time. 6 sides, again and again, not by law, but by tendency. Nature is not rigid. It does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes, fractals, spirals, webs, waves. The branching of rivers and trees and lungs and lightning. Over and over, life chooses these shapes, not randomly, but because they work, because they hold more with less, because they allow complexity to emerge from simplicity. And perhaps that is the most profound pattern of all, that the same few elements, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, form stars and water and cells and thoughts. And from those thoughts, we find ourselves wondering, not just how it all works, but why it's so beautiful. Sometimes in the search for meaning, we overlook the most astonishing thing of all, that we are part of this pattern, not just observers watching the world unfold from a distance, but made of it, shaped by it, flowing within it. Your heartbeat follows rhythms born in the womb, echoing patterns older than memory. Your brain pulses with waves, alpha, theta, delta, each with its own frequency, its own timing. Like tides, like seasons, like breath. These rhythms govern your sleep, your thoughts, your sense of time. And they're not isolated. They sync with light, with darkness, with the pull of the moon, the warmth of the sun, the presence of others. The body adjusts itself not only to survive, but to belong, to fit. You are not a machine. You are a field of interactions. Inside your body, trillions of bacteria, Your microbiome assists with digestion, immunity, even mood. They outnumber your own cells. They speak with chemicals. They balance you invisibly. And above you, the sky continues. The earth spins one full turn every 24 hours. The moon orbits, completing its cycle every 29.5 days. The seasons shift, tied to the tilt of the planet. And you feel it all, even if you don't notice. Why do we wake more easily in spring? Why do we grow quieter in winter? Why do songs, stories, even love seem to follow arcs, beginnings, middles, ends, as if we are wired not just to live, but to shape time? Even memory is not random. It arranges itself in meaning, patterns, associations. You smell a certain flower, and suddenly remember your childhood. You hear a familiar chord, and feel something deep and wordless. This, too, is structure, the internal echo of the external world. Some might call it soul, others emergence. Whatever the name, it suggests that intelligence is separate from the universe. It has one of its forms, just like gravity, just like light, just like the spiral in a shell, the curve of a wave, the branching of a tree. You are not an accident drifting through randomness. You are a pattern that became aware of patterns. A system complex enough to ask about complexity. A structure that can reflect on structure. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most elegant feature of all. Let us pause now and consider those who have looked closely. Not by accident, but by design. Not everyone has the time to wonder. Most lives are filled with motion, chores, obligations, the weight of necessity, to eat, to work, to rest, to repeat. And yet, throughout history, there have been some who stepped outside this rhythm, not because they were better, but because they were given time, or took it, or lost everything else and found only stillness. The monk in the mountains, the sage in the desert, the philosopher walking beneath olive trees, the scientist bent over glass, watching cells divide. These are not separate kinds of people. They are simply people allowed to be still. And in stillness, pattern reveals itself. A monk, rising at dawn, hears the same birds each morning and begins to understand their order. A poet watching snowfall for hours notices how it clings differently to stone than to wood. A scientist, repeating the same experiment 100 times, begins to see what is consistent, what is not, and what cannot be explained. These patterns are not louder than the noise of life. They are quieter. That's why they are missed. The farmer planting by moonlight, the stargazer charting Mars across the sky, the child listening to the echo of a seashell. All of them, in their own way, are tracing the same thread. In monasteries, silence became a practice, not as absence, but as attention. In certain schools of thought, observation was considered sacred. And among artists, stillness was often the beginning of creation. Leonardo studied anatomy not to draw better, but to understand movement. Bach used mathematical ratios in music, not to impress, but because it felt true. The poet Basho sat beneath a tree and waited until the sound of a frog changed everything. And what separates these people from the rest of us is not wisdom or vision or genius. It is time. Time to look. Time to listen. Time to feel complexity without needing to explain it. The patterns are always here, in traffic lights, in footsteps, in laughter, in pain, in recovery. But they reveal themselves only when we slow down, when we stop trying to manage the world and start letting it speak. Even in daily life, fragments of this noticing break through. You look up at the sky and feel something ancient. You hear a familiar voice and know something beyond words. You walk into a room and sense balance, or imbalance. That, too, is pattern recognition. That, too, is attention. And in a way, it is sacred. In many ways, the ability to notice is a kind of privilege. To study the shape of clouds, the rings of Saturn, the veins of a leaf, these are acts of leisure, of access, of peace. Throughout history, those with wealth or safety or solitude have often been the ones who noticed the most, not because they were better, but because their lives allowed it. Aristocrats could afford gardens and telescopes. Emperors commissioned maps of the stars. Patrons paid painters to capture the golden angle of light across a room. Monasteries were built as places of contemplation, time stretched out in long corridors, punctuated by prayer and quiet. Even modern science, for all its rigor and discipline, often depends on space, a lab, a grant, a sabbatical, time apart from the noise. And yet the patterns themselves do not belong to the elite. They are not locked away. They bloom in the same weeds by a roadside, drift through the same winds above crowded streets. They pulse in the breath of someone rushing to a second job. They glimmer in puddles on the walk to school. The difference is not the presence of pattern. It is the attention we are allowed or trained to give. Many people, burdened by the weight of survival, don't have time to wonder. Their thoughts are claimed by urgency, by bills, by hunger, by exhaustion, by grief. And yet, even there, beauty breaks through, in lullabies sung over cracked floors, in patterns stitched into blankets passed down through generations, in the rhythm of shared meals, in the repetition of prayers. In these small repetitions, something ancient lives on, because deep noticing isn't always grand. It can be humble, local, quiet. Sometimes it's simply the moment someone stops mid-task and looks at a tree, not for long, but just long enough to feel the shape of it. A child might do it. An elder, a stranger on the bus, suddenly caught in thought. In those seconds, the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary begins to blur, because the world doesn't ask who we are before offering itself. The patterns are not status symbols. They are gifts. And while some may study them in observatories or write books about them, others, without title, without acclaim, carry them in memory, in story, in song. Not every pattern needs to be proven. Some just need to be lived. Some just need to be seen. Imagine a weaver at her loom, hands moving steadily, rhythmically, line after line. From a distance, the threads seem random strands of color with no meaning. But over time, with patience, a pattern appears, shapes, borders, a story. And it is only by standing back, by looking from a greater height, that the full picture is revealed. So it is with life. For many, the world is experienced in fragments, tasks, conversations, days stacked on days. But over years, something greater begins to take form, a sense of rhythm, of movement, of shape. Not always beautiful, not always clear, but present. And it is often those who live most quietly who come to see it first. A gardener who knows when the soil is ready by touch alone. An elder who feels a storm coming in their joints. A musician who doesn't read music but knows exactly when to enter. These ways of knowing don't come from books or institutions. They come from listening, from repetition, from being close to the rhythm of things. They are not mystical. They are not elite. They are earned through presence. It's not only monks or scholars who glimpse hidden structures. It's anyone who watches closely without distraction. A parent learning their child's moods. A craftsperson sensing the moment when the glaze is ready. A shepherd who knows the slope of every hill without needing to name them. These patterns may never be written down, may never be measured, but they are real, and they are often more enduring than theories. In this way, knowledge becomes less about facts and more about familiarity, about relationship with the land, with the seasons, with others. It's not about control. It's about attunement. And when enough people are attuned to the cycles of weather, the migration of birds, the rise and fall of health, culture forms. Rituals, traditions, practices, each one a kind of agreement with the pattern. Harvest at this time, rest at this time. Plant by the moon, sing when the sun returns. These are not superstitions. They are forms of attention passed down, repetition as memory, as meaning. And when such traditions are lost, something else is often lost with them, a feeling that we are part of a greater rhythm, that life moves not only forward, but in circles, in waves, in layers. To reclaim that sense is not to go backward. It's to re-enter the flow, to remember that we, too, are threads woven through the loom, part of the pattern, whether we see it or not. Now imagine a room, a quiet one. Inside, someone sits, not working, not speaking, just breathing. Outside, the world moves. Sirens, footsteps, screens flashing with headlines. But in here, stillness. And in that stillness, something begins to emerge, not a vision, not a voice, but a kind of noticing. A shift in perception. Noticing how the air feels against the skin, how each breath enters, then leaves, how thoughts rise, linger, fade like clouds across the sky. This is not a religious moment, not a mystical one. It is something older, simpler, a return to the rhythm beneath the noise. Many traditions have practiced this. Zen monks call it zazen, just sitting, not for insight or achievement, but to be present with what is. Sufi mystics speak of the breath as a doorway. Christian contemplatives once sat in stone cells for hours, repeating a single word simply to feel its weight in silence. In the modern world, this may seem impractical. We prize movement, goals, speed. Stillness feels like wasting time, but stillness is not emptiness. It is alignment, a moment when inner life and outer world fall into rhythm, not because we force them, but because we allow them. Even a few minutes of such attention can change how the world appears. The hum of a refrigerator becomes a tone. The flicker of leaves becomes choreography. The ache in the shoulder becomes not an obstacle, but a message. And perhaps the greatest noticing of all, that the line between out there and in here begins to dissolve. What we call the world, light, sound, sensation, is always mediated by perception. There is no view from nowhere. We do not simply see patterns. We are made of them. The same atoms, the same energy, the same time. The breath in your lungs was once part of a tree. The calcium in your bones came from stars. The thoughts in your mind follow electrical rhythms shaped by millennia of evolution. You are not visiting the universe. You are an expression of it. And those who sit in quiet long enough begin to feel this, not as a belief, but as a truth that needs no proof. That meaning is not separate from structure. That wonder is not a luxury, but a form of awareness. That even without answers, attention is enough. And sometimes the most profound act is not to seek more, but to simply be with what already is. So now let the lights dim gently. Let the thoughts that stirred begin to soften, like ripples fading across still water. You have walked through hidden forests and distant galaxies, through cells and stars and songs that repeat themselves in the curve of a shell or the breath of a sleeping child. You have seen that what seems random is often repeating, that what seems simple is layered with structure, that what seems ordinary may, in truth, be extraordinary, but quiet about it. And whether or not there is a grand design behind all of this, the pattern remains. Whether shaped by purpose or by the long, slow mathematics of time, the result is the same, a world that fits together, a structure that supports itself, a system in which atoms become breath, and breath becomes thought, and thought asks the very question, why is this here at all? We may never know, and perhaps that is the gift. Because in the absence of certainty, something else can grow. Humility, reverence, a kind of peace. Not from solving the mystery, but from resting inside it. To walk through your day, even the dull, small hours, and know that complexity moves all around you. That your cells align to rhythms older than civilization. That the morning light follows calculations written into space itself. That the food on your table comes from sun and soil and seed and seasons, a pattern more ancient than language. There's no need to rush toward meaning. It is already here, in the pulse of your wrist, in the turning of the earth beneath you, in the space between moments where thought slows and wonder begins. So rest now, not in the answers, but in the beauty of the question. Let the world be as it is, vast, intricate, ungraspable, and still somehow home.